I'm going to keep this one pretty short because I'm flying to Arizona tomorrow to see my family for the holidays and I've still got to pack and everything, but also keeping it short because this was a pretty terrible game for the Bulls. I'm going to call it a trap game because the Bulls have played 4 games in 6 nights. The Cavs were depleted without Garland, Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and even Caris LeVert, so they likely didn't take this team seriously. In a way, almost like we saw from the Spurs the other night, where the Spurs kind of hung around in the game throughout until the 4th quarter. But in this one, it was even worse because the Bulls hardly even led throughout this game. I think there were a couple points throughout the game where they had a 1-point lead, but outside of that, the Cavs really controlled most of this one. But trap game or not, this is a pretty unacceptable loss, and it's unfortunate of a loss when the Bulls have had so much momentum on their side recently, going 8-3 in their last 11 games. They have a chance to extend that winning streak further against the Cavs bench unit for the most part. That was who played tonight. Dean Wade started, the rookie Craig Porter balled out, Strus lighting up the Bulls, who always seems to torch us in Chicago because we let him go. Like, nah, I get it. It's a lot of games in a short period of time for the Bulls, but when you're playing at home, playing against a team that's without 4 of their best players, you need to come out ready to play and win the game. Energy was non-existent in this one. Yeah, they had some stretches where they got the crowd back into it, especially when they went on that 10-0 run in the 4th quarter to cut the lead to 5. But outside of that, the guys just looked slow out there. We're committing silly fouls rather than playing hard-nosed defense, not getting back on defense in transition, not fighting for rebounds. Like, rebounding killed the Bulls in this game tonight. Second chance points for the Cavs was the difference maker in this one, giving up 15 offensive rebounds to the Cavs compared to the Bulls' 5. And the Cavs converted on most of those offensive rebounds, while the Bulls just kind of stood around and watched them crash the glass and go back up for a putback. Like, that's the thing. It's not like the Cavs shot the ball particularly well, or that they lit up the Bulls from behind the arc like we see on some games. They shot the ball marginally better than the Bulls did, 44.3% compared to the Bulls' 43.8%. Cavs' 3-point shooting wasn't great either, 26% compared to the Bulls' 22%. But for the Cavs, they wanted it more when the shots were missed. Bulls didn't fight to box out. Even when they would get their hands on the ball off of a miss, they couldn't squeeze it, and they would end up just giving it back to the Cavs. I mean, really, I don't know how else to say it. That was the difference maker in this game. That and the fact that the Bulls and their 3-point shooting, which has been so on point during this winning stretch, finally came back down to earth. I mean, we talked about how the shooting over the last 11 games, especially from 3, likely wasn't going to be sustainable, and that came to fruition tonight. Coby's hot streak came to a close. He was 0 for 8 from 3. What I did like seeing from Coby White, though, was that he was still being aggressive and finding other ways to score, whether in the mid-range or finishing around the rim, because even though he was 0 for 8 from 3, he still managed to shoot 8 for 19 from the field overall and finish with 17 points and 7 assists. He did have 4 turnovers, though, which is uncharacteristic of Coby, who has been so much better at taking care of the ball as of late. Patrick Williams was decent in this one, 13 points, 5 for 11 shooting, 2 for 5 from 3. I mean, the fact that Pat has consistently been scoring in double figures when at the start of the season it was almost seen as a miracle if he had 9 points is truly saying something. He also had a team high in box plus minus 0. Yes, everyone else who played tonight was in the negative. DeMar DeRozan, we're still seeing the same thing from DeMar, not taking as many shots, which I like, passing more, finished with 8 assists, 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 steals. Still though, the shot selection from DeMar, pounding of the ball, stagnant offense, especially during that bad 3rd quarter for the Bulls, really cost them when the Bulls went on a big scoring drought, only ended up scoring 16 points in that frame alone. Vucevic, it's funny because whenever I watch Vuce in games like these, I'm always thinking he's struggling or having a rough game when I'm not following along with the box score. But watching him possession by possession, it felt like he was having a bad game. And I think it's because Jared Allen got the best of him on the offensive boards. And maybe it's because overall the Bulls didn't rebound the ball well, which you attribute to Vucevic a lot of the time. But then looking at the box score and you think, this was actually a solid game for Vucevic. 20 points, shot the ball well, 7 for 11, finished around the paint, which he's been struggling to do this season, hit a couple threes, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal in the block, only 1 turnover. It was a good game for Vucevic. And it almost kind of makes me think the Bulls should have utilized him more when Jared Allen was taking a breather on the bench, because the Cavs had to go very small in those stretches instead of going to Andre Drummond, because Drummond really was not a factor in this one, not at all. In fact, the bench as a whole did not show up well tonight for the Bulls. I did like what I saw from Dalen Terry. You can see that he's gaining more confidence and slowing it down, playing smarter basketball as he's getting more meaningful minutes outside of just garbage time in the NBA. But aside from Terry, yeah, the bench was quiet on a night where you really needed those guys to step up, especially when they were going up against the Cavs guys who were usually out of the rotation on most nights when everyone is healthy. And so look, I'm going to try and not read into this one too much. Call it an off night for the Bulls, couldn't hit their shots, they were tired, and for the Cavs, yeah, they were without their best players, but maybe that is what gave them extra motivation. Playing with house money, guys that are trying to prove to the coaching staff why they deserve minutes. I mean, it kind of reminded me of the game when the Bulls played the Milwaukee Bucks just the other day without DeMar DeRozan and Zach Lavine after that embarrassing loss to the Celtics, and you thought the Bulls were going to get beat down. But by being without their best players, it gave the guys a new sense of life and energy and knowing they had to go extra hard to win the game. Not saying we should compare the Bulls to the Bucks in this scenario, but more so using it as an example of why teams show up in different ways and take on an added challenge when their best players are out of the lineup. Because one, it's less pressure for them and they have something to prove knowing they're going to get more opportunities than they otherwise would. The good news for the Bulls, though, is that both the Raptors and the Hawks lost again. Man, those teams are really struggling, but it keeps the Bulls in 10th in the Eastern Conference. Just would have been good to create some separation there from those teams, but we'll take it day by day. The Bulls are off until after Christmas, where they take on the Atlanta Hawks, who have been going through it. That's going to be at the United Center on Tuesday. Content on my end will be a bit sparse so I can spend some time with my family. I hope you all have a great holiday season or whatever you might be celebrating, spending it with your family and friends. I love you guys. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.